Hello, and welcome to Developing Your Operating System, Part 1, Connecting All the Pieces. My name is Rick Phelps, and I am a business and executive coach with Action Coach Business Coaching. And this is the second series of blogs. Our first one was Understanding Your Economic Engine. There are elements of that that you may want to catch up with first before you delve into the operating system, because we're going to be building on that series. All right, so we'll be talking about developing your operating system. And what exactly is an operating system? So I did the usual Wikipedia check, and an operating system from a computer, which is where most of us have heard the term, is that software that ties everything together. It allows the computer and the memory and the peripherals to all work. And so without an operating system, all the pieces, oh, well, independently useful, collectively don't do much. And as you can see from the bottom line here, without an operating system, a computer is useless. Well, every business has an operating system as well, except in most cases, the vast majority of businesses that I've interacted with, which is several hundred over my career, have not had an explicitly defined operating system. And this is a problem. And while a business without a clearly defined operating system is not completely useless, it is in fact worth less. And we want to have and help businesses build systems and processes that make them successful and highly profitable. And so that's what we're about. Let's see how we develop your operating system. And again, we're going to start with a very simple factory. It has 3 processing steps, A, B, and C, with some inventory in between. And we want to develop a connection or relationships between all the parts. We want to do that from beginning to end, and we want to do that from the shop floor to the top floor. So we want to be able to connect all the different pieces, all the different roles in the business to the objectives of the business and the goals of the business. And that's what we're calling an operating system. So to do that, we have several steps. First step is define the system. And while we look at a SIPOC model, a supplier and customer and factory model, we are not talking about the suppliers or the customers. So we'll take them out and we'll add in the administrative functions. So while we tend to focus specifically on the operations side of things in these blogs, we are acknowledging here that the administrative functions are important and need to be connected to. And that's pretty much the last we'll talk about that. If you want to know more about how to connect them, just reach out. So we define the system. We say this is what's inside the boundaries of what we are defining as our system. That needs an operating system to drive it. Next step, define the purpose or the goal. Now, here I highly recommend you read the book The Goal if you haven't already, by Eli Goldratt. This is where this is coming from. You will recognize this as 3 necessary conditions from that book. But the purpose or goal of every business is some derivative of make more money now and in the future. So the goal of business is to become more profitable and more successful, not just today, but in the future as well. Once you figure that out, you want to know how to measure your goals. And if you're looking at making more money, the #1 metric for that is throughput dollars. And we have talked about that in the vlog series, Understand Your Economic Engine. So if you're not familiar with what we're talking about with throughput, inventory, and operating expense, go back and watch that blog series. All right, so these 3 core metrics, throughput, inventory, and operating expense, are necessary to be able to derive the other 4 key measures of just about every business, which includes net profit, productivity, return on investment, and inventory turns. All right, so we're going to be connecting throughput dollars in this exercise to all the different aspects of our little factory here. So in order to do this, we need to identify the constraint and clearly understand its role. So let's go back to the diagram from Understanding Your Economic Engine. We had a diagram that looked like this. We had a pinch point in the flow of throughput dollars into our bucket that pays the operating expenses. And that has to be filled before it overflows into our profit bucket. All right, or our profit bag in this case. And we have said time and time again, the essence of profound insight is simplicity. And this is really the key to synchronizing your business, developing your uh, economic engine, and developing your operating system is understand where that pinch point is. Where is the process that is restricting your flow of throughput? And we're going to look at a factory that has three pieces. So we'll have A upstream of that pinch point and C downstream of that pinch point. All right. And we will color the constraint red to make it stand out. And we will connect that to throughput dollars. So again, from the economic engine vlog, you know that the constraint limits the flow of throughput dollars. Therefore, if we're going to be making more money now in the future, if we're going to be processing more throughput dollars per hour, then we need to connect that metric to what's going on in the constraint. That's really, really important. And to do that, we start stating the strategies, the overarching strategies or purposes for B. And that is maximize throughput. And that we're talking about throughput dollars here. We're not just talking about tons or pounds or items or products or services. We're talking about throughput dollars. And secondarily, control cost. All right. So number one goal and purpose of the constraint is to maximize throughput. Secondarily, and it's in much smaller print there on purpose, is to control costs. All right. And so once we've got the constraint and its purpose understood, we then look at the non-constraints, which in this case would be processes A and C, and define their relationship to the constraint, which is B. And so from the non-constraint upstream, we want to not diminish B. Right? So whatever A does, it needs to do it in a way that doesn't negatively impact the constraint, process B. The second objective is to protect its capacity. In order for it to not limit B, you're going to need to have a little bit of extra capacity, which we call protective capacities. We'll talk about that more in a later vlog. And then we want to do this, again, in smaller print here, do this at the lowest cost. C is similar, do not diminish B, protect the capacity, and do this at the lowest cost. All right. So now we start defining the roles of each of the processes and the relationships that they have upstream through downstream, all connected to throughput dollars. So if we want to maximize throughput dollars, we need to maximize what's going on in B, and we need to not mess that up at A or C. Pretty basic, pretty simple. All right. And here's where this fractal comes in. Fractals are fascinating things. They replicate the same thing over and over and over. The deeper you dig into it, it's the same at every level. And so that's really what's going to happen next. We're going to dive into B. Now, if you have a simple process, B might be a single machine or even a single operator. If you're a more complex business, a larger business, B might consist of several processes, in which case you would replicate the process all over again. You understand its purpose, and you would identify the constraint within the sub-processes, and you develop the relationship. So B has a sub-process constraint at B3, and you would define the relationship from there to B2 and B1. And you might go down even another level where you have a B3 2. It's the constraint. So it's the constraint within the constraint within the constraint. We start looking at this thing in ever smaller pieces, right? And again, the relationship between that and the other processes. We would do the same thing at A and C, right? Again, the A's role is do not diminish. And because we're now not limiting capacity, we want to have the idea of a control point, right? And so if not diminishing B and doing it at the lowest cost is the goals of this process, then somewhere one of these sub-processes is more important than the others, right? And we want to identify what that is, and we'll call that the control point. And so in this case, A3 is the control point. And so the role of A, the ability of A to fulfill its role is dictated by A3. And then that dictates the relationship between A1 and A2 to A3. Right? And again, going back down through the line, maybe A3-2 is all the same. It's the part of A3 that limits or needs to be maximized to do it at the lowest cost, right? So we start developing the relationships. We're cascading down through the business, down through the layers of equipment and processes until we get to the bottom. And we do the same thing with C, all right? And so, again, stepping back out, we've now connected the dots. We've connected the dots from the beginning of the process to the end of the process, and from the highest level, the department level, or high level equipment, all the way down to the lowest level. And so you do this systematically. It doesn't take a tremendous amount of time. If you have a very complicated process, it might take half a day. If you have a simple process, it might take half an hour, right? But it's worth doing and worth defining what these relationships are, because it directly connects the work everyone performs on a day-to-day basis to the goals of the business, which are increase throughput, reduce inventory, and reduce operating expenses. My name is Rick Phelps. I can be reached at rickphelps@actioncoach.com. My website is phelpsltd.com, and my cell phone, which rings directly to me, is 216-533-1387. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out and ask them. Always glad to help. Have a safe and profitable day.